And I'm going to go ahead and refresh while you're doing your demo, and it should be all working.
Cool.
It's not an extended desktop. It was actually the YouTube, when we started the presentation,
Yep.
blew away all of our sharing and decided that we have to rejoin. So, Reid, why don't you go ahead and kick off, because you can share and I can't.
100%. So yeah, as Chuck already introduced me a little bit, I'm Reid. I'm with PowerPivot Pro, do a lot of consulting and tons of training on this software, and we just kind of want to run you through some of the really cool features that they have today. So for those of you that are looking at the screen right now, what you can probably see is a few visuals. One of them might look a little bit new. There's a thing in here called the ribbon chart, and before I actually show about anything of how to make it or whatever it is, let's talk about kind of some of the business scenarios that this accounts for and what it solves to do. So a lot of you are probably familiar with a stacked column chart. It essentially lets you show, on columns, say like categories, but then additionally you can break that out into subcategories, so you can essentially see like the parts and the Lego blocks that build based on relative size, the actual total amount. But one of the things that really does not account for is an ability to easily see performance. Which one of them was the highest, which one of them was the lowest. You can sort alphabetically. You can sort charts by the amount in terms of smallest to greatest across the axis, but there's no way to really watch performance month over month. And that's what the ribbon charts really accounted for, and allows really cool things like this. And if you actually take a look at this right here and go ahead and just maximize that a bit. It's a little tall, but essentially what you can watch now is month to month, all of these, all the categories here, you can see how their performance goes up. If you look at the bottom, you can see beverages slowly starts to gain its lead. Has a couple points of seasonality, but it really allows you to see into the detail and observe where performance is. And you can do this for categories. You can do it for employees. Anything where you want to observe the trends over time to see by whatever amount it is. So you can throw just any DAX calculation in there in terms of a percentage, a total amount, count of orders, ratios to budget, whatever that would be. And it's really cool to be able to just immediately glance at this and just see those call outs. So I have it on here as the completed version. I will essentially just go in as well and just show you how you can quickly make one of these. And once I've done with that, then I want to throw it back over to Chuck once he's finished setting up. All right. We go over here to our blank canvas, and what you'll notice over here, keen observer will see that this visual in the September release, right, Chuck, or was that August?
I think that was August. Yep.
Yes, it was in the August release. They added this in, so it's a little hard to see, but right in there, the icon for that, it looks slightly like the combo chart, but that's a distinct button to create a new ribbon chart on a page. So it's built into Power BI right now. I'm gonna go ahead and select that.
I'd like to think it has the best of the Sankey and a 2D area chart. It's the best of both worlds.
I think so too, and I found so many uses for it, and a lot of customers that I've shown have, especially for companies that do open sharing of employee incentives and all those other things. It's really cool to provide like dashboards where people can month to month kind of have like contests and see between each other how they're performing, and then watch like historical amounts of that. So there's a lot of really cool things to do. I'm actually thinking of making using that somehow with some football statistics or something else, where you can watch sports performance and maybe compare players on a team based on stats. All right. So on the other one that I had used, I'm going to go ahead and throw a date hierarchy into here, and then use some values as well. There we go. And as you can see, that uses the auto date hierarchy, which is one of the awesome features of Power BI. The fact that it just creates the year, quarter, month, and day whenever you throw a date data type into that. So we got that on there. The value I want to use is, and I'm going to use profits. It's a much better metric to determine, I think, ranking than total sales. Certain products or certain items can definitely have very different metrics depending on the data you're looking at. So part of the thing with designing charts, and to go a bit into the best practices, is always knowing what story you want to tell with which amounts of data. There we are, total profits. And finally, I think I'm going to put in, it was a category. Yep, perfect. Let's go take a look. There we go. Now, right now it's on year because my page is filtered to that, but I'm just going to go ahead and drill down until we get to the, there we go, get to the month. Now, you might notice that this looks a little bit different than the one that I have at the moment. And that's actually for a reason. There's a few settings that I can go into here that I think make it, that call it out a bit better. Let me show you in comparison to the other one. There you go. Yeah, there's a way to essentially kind of shade out the gaps between it a bit to help put a little bit more emphasis on the columns themselves. And then you can also, if you look really closely, you can apply a little bit of a gap between them to also help separate the ribbons a bit. So I'm going to show you both of those formatting settings. And I think that should about do it for this one. All right, so let me scoot that over here. Default colors, depending on your theme, always looks a bit circusy sometimes. All right, go ahead to the Format Painter. And then if you actually open the ribbon section right here, there's two that I want to do some settings on right there. There's spacing, so I'm going to add a little bit of spacing in. Let's go ahead and 2 should be good. There we go, perfect. And then transparency between them. That's what allows me to determine how much shading I essentially want to apply onto those. So I'm going to go ahead and put you right around. There you go. Perfect. And then whether or not you want to add a border. But I think that gets a little too garish if you put that in there. But this I think is a much better default setting. It really shows where the actual columns of data are, and then it separates the connectors. Where like, yeah, they're attached, but that's not actually the data itself. That's just simply attaching the performance month over month. And then of course, for most of you that you probably use it, data labels is, when applicable, a very good thing to put into there. If it actually, and this one won't be shown because specifically I believe the numbers are a little too big to put into there, but in general, as a good practice, data labels are pretty important to show. So if I swap this out with, let's say, orders instead, those will pop up. Data label. You still not sure? Ah. Let's do this. There we go. Perfect. And the one last thing that I'll do, essentially my personal practice, I generally don't like to have the title and the legend on the same spot. It's just it's too much information all in one section. For people who are maybe not as familiar, they might not know how they separate from each other. So I usually like to throw that just down in the bottom to create a little bit of separation from each other. There we go. And perfect. We got a ribbon chart there. All right. Was there any questions on the forum?
There are. A couple people are saying black screens, which isn't good. Some people said that they were able to refresh it and they got it working, and a bunch of people said that they got it. Now, in order to get mine working, to do what you had to do,
yep,
you had to close the whole session.
Literally just refresh the Google.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that didn't work for me. I'll try it again. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to do my demo on your machine because that's actually going to work out pretty good.
Cool.
So what I'd like you to do is open up a browser in your sharing session in the window that's shared. And in the new tab here, or a new browser, that works as well. Perfect. We're going to go to aka.ms/PBI updates. And of course, all of you at home can be doing this as well, or if you're at work or whatever. So that's actually going to be the one that we're going to see. So let's go ahead and hit enter. And what this does is it's actually going to show you if Reid's put it on the screen that's shared. That's good.
Yep.
So
look at that. You already got that embedded.
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and show the people what that URL one more time is. So aka.ms/ perfect.
/PBI
updates.
Let me just.
Okay, perfect. And at this point, you actually can see that report. And I'm going to go ahead and have Reid download that. So if you scroll to the bottom, this PBIX, in addition to being a publish to web, is something that all of you guys can look at. So if you're ever curious, if it shipped in September versus August, and actually I was thinking back, it was September, it wasn't August. I was wrong. So scroll down a little bit further, and you're going to see that you can actually download further down, further.
There we go.
And right there, it says, I just saw it. It says, what's new in October? Let's go ahead and grab that file.
Perfect.
And we're going to download that, and we're going to have Reid open this up. Again, so if you're ever curious, and I keep this up to date on a monthly basis, and like I said, as of this month, it's the little, yeah, there we go. As of this month, I'm going to start tracking what's new in PowerApps and Flow. I'm going to go ahead and backfill those so you can actually see what they shipped on a regular basis.
Oh, that's awesome.
But this is that same report. So you can go out and say, God, I really want to know what happened in a particular day, or if I want to know if this data connector actually shipped on the particular area. Now, you'll see that in this report, I actually did what I would call some suboptimal tactics. If you look at the tabs at the bottom, I have one for desktop, and I have one for service, and I have one for data connectors. Why did I do that? So that way you'll know that that's actually how you get to them. What would be the right way? Well, the right way, I'm grabbing Reid's mouse, is go ahead and, am I in the desktop? I'm actually.
All right, scroll over.
Yeah, I need to do it. There we go. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and say right click, and let me see if I can do a right click. And what you'll see that there is actually a drill through option where this first page is actually indeed live, and I can go ahead and take a look at any of those. And I didn't need all those other tabs because I can now drill through to a page that's specifically set around that. And of course, this big round button here at the top is going to take me back to that home page. So how do you actually create one of these? Actually, it's control click if you're in edit mode. Will take me back. So the way you actually create one of those is, this is kind of in my way. Can I move it? I can move it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to a page that wasn't in the drill through. So when I right clicked and I said drill through, it actually showed me this tab. Let's go ahead and set this one up to be our drill through. So you'll see that there is actually a brand new drill through filter in the gutter. And I'm going to go ahead and drag over that my drill through filters for the product. Actually, it looks like no, that's product. This is actually a bad data set. So I haven't uploaded. So I have uploaded one that has a couple of these rows that were messed up. So watch for that. It's already live in the service, so the one you're looking at interactively. But now if I go ahead and go back to that first page, which is all the way over here. Oh, by the way, when I added that, it added this little glyph that is to take back. You can actually set, just like in bookmarks, I can set that glyph, where is it? That glyph to be any object. So just like you can attach a bookmark to any object, I can go ahead and actually set it to, some picture that goes out and has an up arrow or a VCR play button or whatever the case is.
So you can delete that and then just add your own image.
Just like, yeah, yes. And the fact that we give you one and that you usually can't even find it is probably suboptimal, but at least it gives you the starting point. And now if we go ahead and go back to that first page and I scroll over to where we're looking at on the PowerApps and right click, what we should see is now 2 pages on drill through. The drill through demo that we just added and the drill through product. And drill through demo is the one that we just enabled. So that is my first demo on how to actually do a lot but cleaner PBIXs rather than 1,000 tabs that already have those filters set. Let your audience go ahead and determine and explore the data themselves. So cool. Reid, back to you.
And I actually did have one question regarding drill through. One thing that I noticed is that even if you hit the back button to go back to the other page, it still keeps the filter on the first one. So like you can drill through and it will replace it, but it doesn't clear the filters when you hit the back button. Do you know if there's going to be an option at any point for it to do that?
Ask the question one more time. So when I go ahead and hit the back button, it retains that filter that I was
So yeah, from here, drill through to one of the places for, say, PowerApps. You go through there, you hit the back button. If you go back to that page just by selecting it, it will still have the filter for PowerApps. It wouldn't have cleared it. Would there ever be an option to allow the back button to, when it does that, it clears the filter again?
We are changing the way we're adding behaviors to filters so we can go ahead and make sticky and actually have you control them. Now, as far as the back button making those controls, I want to say yes, but probably not as a result of the back button itself, just by virtue of the fact we're going to let you control what filters you see when you navigate to a page.
Okay, that would be awesome, because I can see a business scenario where somebody uses the drill through, but then they just go to the page normally to want to see it. But now the only way to actually clear the filters with that report open is you have to actually clear it from the filters section.
So let me give you a much larger scenario. What happens if I actually want to send you a button or a link in a web page that goes out and takes it, and I always want you to go out and take a look at Pacific Northwest, because that particular link was for Pacific Northwest.
I like that too.
So that way I can go out and set filters on your URLs. So that's actually called parameters, and it's something that we're going to continue to extend. So you can actually clear those old filters as well as actually specifying the data you want to see.
So for online versions, like, yeah, you can just share a link that will already be pre-filtered to that. So
and,
one report, 5 links for 5 different people.
Yeah, and we have to remember that when we think about these different products, we're thinking of PowerBI.com as the way you do your sharing and your collaboration. And really, desktop is meant to be your editor or your authoring environment.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so that's why those features are going to be tied to your online experience.
Okay, yeah, I totally get that.
Okay.
Love it. All right, so with that being said, let me switch back over to mine. So the one of the next things that I want to show here in a minute, but I'm going to first talk about it a little bit. Let me switch over here. All right, so there's been a lot of scenarios, especially like in finance, certain situations where people would love to adjust or manually manipulate variables or values depending on the projections that they want to do. Like, you know what, I would love to immediately just know, like, what would my predicted profits have been this year if I had maybe only spent 80% of my expenses or 120%. But some way to easily toggle between that and multiply things by a number and essentially just have a sliding scale for that. Now there's been a way to do this in DAX for a long time. Rob's written a lot of posts about disconnected tables that can do that, where you can toggle between certain numbers on buttons. With Power BI more recently, there's been a numerical slider that's let you do that. But there's not been really any user interface way to just create that. And that's one of the releases that they did back in, I think it was also August, right?
Yes.
Yeah. August released something called the Whatif parameter. And the Whatif parameter lets you essentially do something very similar to that. So let me show you what that looks like here. Right here, I have this little slicer called expense adjustment. Now what this lets me do is right now it's cleared. So it's essentially showing me actual expenses from this report. But now I have a slider that will let me toggle the percentage of that expense, and then all the numbers on this report will change. So for managers, executives, or anybody else, if they want to be able to see like what if scenarios, like what if my budget was only 80%? What if my actuals were only, like 120% this year if I had made more? What would those numbers look like across these, all of my charts? So let's kind of take a look at what this can do.
And by the way, if you hear loud typing, it's me answering your question, so I apologize.
No worries. Yeah, so by default, I actually have this set to, the lowest you can go to is 80%. The highest I have it set to is, there we go, 119. So zooming out a bit, you can see all of these numbers on my chart change because I've done that. And then I'll show you exactly how I did. Let's drop that down to 89. Okay, there, I had more profit that year. But it's a really powerful tool because otherwise a person can look at total profits on one of these charts or any of these single values, multiply it by a number in their head or on a calculator and get a number out of it. But the powerful part about this is you don't just have one version of it. You can have 1,000. You can adjust it by 1%, 0.1%, any increment that you want to. And let me show you one other spot in here. We actually did this on a showcase report that we made for the partner showcase page, where we have conversion rates and a whole bunch of other really cool things that allows you to just instantly toggle with this thing. So I'm very much in love with this new feature. It just allows you to just really gives you about 1,000 reports in one. All right. With that being said, let me go ahead and switch over to this page, and then I'll show you how to add it. So up here at the top, under modeling, there's a little button called What If Parameter. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And a pop-up should, there we go, the parameter. So it gives you the option to put a name. let's just call this, I'd already called it one before, so expense adjust. Perfect. And you are given an option in terms of data type. So whole number, of course, is just a solid number. Decimal number, fixed decimal for those of you who are curious. That used to be called currency, but now they call it fixed decimal. So in general, if you're wanting to do some kind of a currency what if, that's the one that you'd use. For our scenario, I want to do percentage, which would be a decimal number. And I'll reproduce exactly what I had made before. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. My minimum is going to be 0.8 because I don't want somebody to just below 80%. in reality, most businesses, I doubt are going to want to see what 40% expenses would be in this specific scenario. So you want to give it a range that's realistic. Like there's no point of going to 500% and all the way down to 0. That's just like, that's outside of the realm of plausible business scenarios. And then 1.2 for 120%. And then increment's important too. I want it to go by an increment of 1%. So that would be 0.01. And this, by the way, I learned the hard way. It will not actually, you'll notice that like 0.01 to me makes sense, but it won't actually accept that as a numerical value unless I include a 0 in front of it. So you do have to have a number before the decimal point if you're ever doing decimals. And then the default, I'm going to set at just 1, which is essentially no change. And then it's going to put a slicer onto the page. So we're going to take a look down over here under our fields list. There you go, right there. Interestingly enough, it added it even though I was filtered. That might be a slight glitch.
Interesting.
Yeah, because see, I'm filtered to orders, but it's still, even though the word order is not an expense adjustment, it added that to the list of my filtered values on the field section. But yes, it's good for me and good for the demo. So we got a DAX calculated table that has 2 values in here. If we take a look on the first column right there, the Whatif column, you'll see that it actually uses a function called generate series. So it's generating a series of numbers between 0.8 and 1.2 with an increment of essentially the 1%. And then alternatively, what it creates next to it is the expense adjusted value. And that's just simply using a function called selected value. And essentially, if there is a selected value, meaning I've used that slider, it will return the row from that, then whatever that number might be. Like if it's 80%, 81, 82. Otherwise, the default is 1. Now this won't do anything yet. If I'm actually using this, nothing will actually be happening with the value on there. But all I have to do is apply that into the DAX calculation for my expenses, which I can show you is what I did over here. Okay, I'll see in total expenses that I essentially just took my original calculation, and all I did is now multiplied it by that expense adjustment value. And that's what you would do with any of these. Like if there, whatever original DAX calculation or column that you're trying to apply this adjustment to, you would simply add it into there as a multiplication or division. And then if the model's designed correctly, it trickles all the way down to the rest of it. I'll point out one other thing too. So I was trying to figure out, my first thought is, okay, it says 0.8. I would rather have that number on the scale show 80%. Like that's just, it's a formatting thing that's, for a customer delivery that should look like that. It's like, okay, so I'm thinking to myself, where would that be? Maybe it's in the painter section. There's somewhere to set the formatting in here. Couldn't find it anywhere. So what I realized is actually it requires the setting of the column itself to go into there. So expense adjustment, you notice how this is what's used in that automatically created filter. So when I format this, it will then format the actual slicer itself. Change that to decimal or percentage. There we go. And I passed it right through to there. So that looks a lot better.
It does.
Yep. Yeah, that's about it. The rest is just kind of some cleanup of putting a little bar in there, but I can go ahead and skip over that. So was there any kind of standout questions or anything about this one?
There were some comments and concerns or requests about having a global clear filters, a page clear filters. So I actually referred these people back to ideas.powerbi.com. The idea has been listed there. And I totally understand it. Have some sort of action where I can reset it back to what the author thinks is in a clean state.
So you could, well, I guess, yeah, because I've created bookmarks for bookmark all.
That's right.
As kind of one, and then you can have a button that is like reset.
That's right. You could positively have a bookmark that has no filters, and then call that the clear all.
Yeah.
And that is certainly one way to solve it. And Stephen, I think Treb has already recommended that is actually one of the tactics that you choose. Okay, guys, what I'm going to do is I don't have a refresh button because I actually opened this up and Google put it into a modal window. I am going to grab that URL. I'm going to put it into a new window, and I'm going to see if I can actually get my screen sharing working. Since the microphone is connected to this machine in that instance, we may lose audio briefly.
Okay.
So if you guys have got any karma, any good prayers, anything that's going to help, this would be the time to use it. So, and I want to know if they can hear us. So we're going to go ahead and share this. Oh, I think we're screen sharing. And it says live. And the little microphone button is not lit up. So let's go back out and see in the chat window if anybody can hear us. So Frank Govers, there should be a clear all buttons. That's the last one I saw. Oh, wait, there's more. Ah, they can still hear us.
Okay, that's good.
That's very, very cool. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So hopefully you guys can see my machine. And this is actually the same report that we were looking at a little while ago.
Yeah.
Actually, can you bring up that YouTube so we can actually see what they're seeing? And then what I'm going to do is
this page or this page?
Should be in the YouTube.
Because I'm on that. I am on that on this one, right?
Oh, and I'm seeing it not what I'm seeing. So let's go ahead and click on this. And maybe I'm just not going to get any joy on getting screen share. And I'm glad that we tested it to know. Yeah, because it shows nothing.
Oh, interesting.
And it's coming in as a different person even.
Can we continue to use this guy? Are you able to derive part of it from this?
I don't think so. Okay,
Okay.
What are they seeing here? No, they're still seeing it. Okay, we're still seeing the memberships. So what we're going to do is we're going to try something, and we're not going to spend a lot of time doing it. In another tab, what we're going to go ahead and do, actually in an incognito session, a whole nother browser instance, because we're going to actually try my identity, and we're going to show you some things that I hadn't really planned on. So go ahead and open up PowerBI.com, and we're going to go to a different tenant, and click on sign in. And the sign in is, let me go ahead and see if I can get me in here. powercommunity.onmicrosoft.com. Matter of fact, I think you actually have some accounts on here for our dashboard today.
Yeah, I think I have.
And it looks like I've even logged onto this machine before, but with an old password. Okay, one more time.
Oh yeah, I definitely have some Power Community ones. Oh.
Stay signed in. Yes, I do. So this is goodness.
Go to the right. There you go. Got it.
And just to make sure that we have a lot of extra challenges, he's used Reid's got two screens set up, and they're looking at different areas, and they're set on top of each other. So just to make sure that everything is really hard and never going to work out for us. PowerApps.com, and we're going to log in with that. So again, I mentioned the fact that PowerApps is going to be an intrinsical way of you collecting or actually modifying your data. And I wanted to bring up a dashboard, and I've shown this a couple different times to get that meme across. So in this case, as a Microsoft standard across all of our dashboards going forward, we actually have this way where you can go out and rate our dashboards. So through telemetry and usage, you can actually see if people are using it, but you can't see if they like it. So this one here, it still needs some work. So I'm going to go ahead and click this 1 star, and what you should see here is the last value you actually put in, and you actually should see it change the average down below in that tab. So let's actually do it one more time because it didn't look like it came through, and we're going to see if we can't get these coming through. Yeah, so the demo guys just absolutely hate me today is apparently what's happening. Oh, there they work. But of course, this one blanks out as a result of that one. So we're going to do one more. We're going to see if we can't get this one. Actually, we're just going to refresh the screen. I think if we refresh the screen, and again, this is kind of still in development.
Sure.
It's released,
yeah,
and you can play with it. There you go. You can see the 1. And actually, I think you saw the 10 because there's 10 up there. And that's us going ahead and collecting data. I can go ahead and modify the data. So let's say that I am going to do crazy things like order a computer. I should see that the last computer was 2,000 and the overall spend for the budget was $7,000. So this is how and why you would use PowerApps and Power and flow inside of it. So what I wanted to do is walk through what are some of the new things that they just recently introduced in PowerApps.
I mean, I think the term that's really great for that is just it's essentially right back, you know, and that's the thing that people love. That's the buzzword.
Yeah, and you have to be very concerned about when you're promising or when we're promising right back. And the reason I say that we need to be concerned about those promises is because what happens if you're actually using a Spark cluster or Hadoop cluster that then pushes it back into an AS server, and then you actually have some sort of ETL processing